Disclaimer: this content is only for mature audiences only. Viewer discretion is advised. The rain had just begun to fall, soft and steady, as I grabbed my coat and made for the door. My heart was pounding, not from the cold, but from everything that had just been said. His words still hung in the air like smoke, thick and suffocating. I didn't want to look back. I didn't want to see the expression on his face, because I knew it would make leaving even harder. The wooden floor creaked under my steps as I crossed the living room, each sound a reminder of all the memories built in this home. I reached for the handle, ready to escape, ready to breathe again. But just as my fingers touched the cold metal, I felt it, warmth, sudden and strong, wrapping around my waist. His hand. His pull. His breath close enough to send shivers down my spine. I froze, caught between the urge to break free and the part of me that still remembered how safe it once felt in his arms. The world outside the door seemed distant now, blurred by the storm and the chaos in my chest. "Don't," he said, his voice low but trembling. It wasn't anger I heard, it was fear. Fear of losing something he wasn't ready to let go of. My own breath caught, my pulse racing faster than the rain outside. I wanted to ask him why pull me back after pushing me away for so long? But the words wouldn't come. His grip wasn't rough, but it was firm, like he was holding on to more than just my body. Like he was holding on to every promise we ever made, every late-night whisper, every morning coffee shared in silence. I could feel his heartbeat against my back, steady and desperate all at once. My eyes fell to the floor, watching the shadow of his arm looped around me, wondering if I had the strength to step away, or the courage to stay. The silence between us stretched thin, broken only by the rain tapping against the window. My mind was a storm of its own, torn between the life I thought I wanted and the man who still had the power to make me stop in my tracks. I knew that whatever I decided in the next few moments would change everything. And then, he whispered something in my ear that made my breath catch completely. But before I could react, before I could even turn around, everything stopped. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. My mind was trying to make sense of what he had just whispered, but the words were tangled with so many memories, so much history, that they didn't land in a straight line. I could hear the quiet hitch in his breathing, the same way it used to sound when he was about to tell me something important. But things were different now. We weren't the same people we were when we fell in love. The house felt smaller than ever, like the walls themselves were leaning in to listen. My eyes darted to the corner where our wedding photo still hung, a little crooked from the time we had argued about moving it. We had laughed then, laughed so hard we forgot why we were upset in the first place. That laughter felt like a lifetime ago. Now, the silence between us was heavy, pulling at every corner of my resolve. I could feel the warmth of his arms still holding me, but I remembered the cold distance in his eyes these past few months. Late nights at work. Conversations cut short. Smiles that didn't quite reach him anymore. Every sign had been there, telling me to walk away, and yet here I was, rooted to the spot, unable to take another step forward. "You don't understand," he murmured, his voice breaking slightly. That tone, soft, pleading, had always been my undoing. My throat tightened, but I didn't answer. I was afraid that if I spoke, my voice would betray me, and I would lose the little control I had left. Outside, the rain grew heavier, drumming against the glass as if urging me to decide. I thought about the last time we had stood this close. It was in the kitchen, weeks ago. He had brushed a strand of hair from my face, kissed my forehead, and told me everything would be fine. But then the lies started creeping in, small at first, until they grew into something neither of us could ignore. Now, his grip felt like the last thread tying me to this life, to him. My hand tightened on the doorknob. I could still walk away. I should. But something in his voice, something in the way his chest rose and fell behind me, told me that if I left now, I might never know the truth he was trying to tell me. And just as I was about to pull away, he said my name again, softer this time. almost like a prayer. His voice lingered in the air, wrapping around me the way his arm did, gentle, but impossible to ignore. I finally turned my head just enough to see him from the corner of my eye. His expression was unreadable, a mix of regret and something I couldn't name. The flicker of the lamp caught in his eyes, making them look almost wet, though I couldn't tell if it was the light or something deeper. "You think walking away will fix this," he said quietly. The words weren't an accusation, they sounded like a plea. But that plea made my chest tighten. I had been carrying the weight of unanswered questions for too long. Where had he been on the nights he came home late? Why did his phone light up with names I'd never heard before? And why did his smile feel like a memory instead of something real? I wanted to ask all of it, but instead, my mind pulled me back to the beginning. To the day we met at the train station, when he had stood there in the rain, offering me his umbrella even though he was soaked through himself. That version of him, the man who made me feel safe before I even knew his name, was the man I had married. But somewhere along the way, pieces of him had drifted away, replaced by shadows I didn't understand. The clock on the wall ticked louder in the silence, each second pushing me closer to a choice I wasn't ready to make. His grip didn't tighten, but it didn't loosen either. It was as if he knew that letting go would mean watching me walk out for good. I caught the faint smell of his cologne, the same one he wore the night he proposed. The scent pulled at something in me I didn't want to feel. And yet, beneath all the emotion, there was a sliver of suspicion that wouldn't leave me alone. What if the truth he wanted to tell me wasn't something I could forgive? What if his reason for pulling me back was selfish, meant only to keep me here until he figured out how to make me stay for good? He said my name again, this time with a tremor in his voice. I felt his forehead rest lightly against the back of my head. And then, almost too softly to hear, he whispered the first 3 words that could either save us, or break us completely. His words echoed in my head, but my body wouldn't move. The rain outside had turned into a full storm, the wind rattling the windows as if urging me to run. But I stayed frozen, my hands still on the doorknob, my breath coming in shallow bursts. I could feel every rise and fall of his chest against my back, every tremor in his fingers as they held me. He wasn't just keeping me from leaving, he was holding on like a man afraid of losing his last chance. "What are you hiding from me?" I finally asked, my voice barely more than a whisper. The silence that followed was deafening. I turned my head slightly, just enough to catch the flicker in his eyes. He opened his mouth, then closed it again, as if weighing the cost of speaking. My pulse pounded in my ears. He didn't answer my question. Instead, he stepped closer, closing the small space that still existed between us. "If you walk out now," he said slowly, "you'll never know the truth." The way he said it made my stomach twist. Truth. A word that could heal, or destroy. I thought about all the nights I had lain awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if there was someone else. If the man who had once been my safe place had found a new home in someone else's arms. The thought had eaten away at me, but I had never asked outright, not until now. And still, he wasn't answering. The thunder cracked outside, and the lights flickered for a split second. It was enough to make my heart jump, enough to make me realize how loud my breathing had become. His grip shifted, his hand resting lower on my waist, anchoring me there. My skin prickled, not from his touch, but from the tension coiled so tightly between us it felt like it could snap at any second. He leaned in closer, his lips near my ear, his voice lower than before. "You think you're ready for what I have to tell you," he murmured, "but you're not." The words sent a cold shiver racing down my spine. And before I could speak, before I could demand he just tell me, he turned me around to face him. His eyes locked on mine, dark and intense, and in that moment, I knew that whatever came next would change everything. His eyes held mine so firmly that it felt like the whole storm outside had gone silent, even though I could still see the lightning flashing through the window. There was something in his gaze, fear, urgency, maybe even guilt, that made my stomach twist. My instinct told me to pull back, but my feet stayed planted, my hands still clutching the door handle as if it could anchor me to reality. "You're not leaving," he said, and it wasn't a command, it was almost a plea. His voice cracked slightly, betraying the calm he was trying to hold on to. I wanted to ask him again what he had been hiding, but before I could, he let out a slow breath and said something I wasn't expecting at all. "It's not just about us." Those words were like a hook pulling me closer. Not just about us? My mind raced through every possibility. Was there someone else involved? Was this about his family? Or mine? His fingers tightened on my waist as if he could feel me pulling away mentally, my thoughts darting toward suspicion. "You've been keeping secrets," I said quietly, trying to keep my voice steady. His jaw tightened, but instead of answering, he stepped around me and reached for the front door. For a moment, I thought he was going to let me leave, but instead, he locked it. My pulse spiked instantly. "Please, just listen to me," he said, almost desperate now. "There's something you need to know before you walk out that door, something that will make everything make sense." The storm outside roared louder, wind battering against the windows. I could feel my heartbeat matching its rhythm. "Then tell me," I demanded. "Tell me now." He hesitated, running a hand through his hair like he was trying to find the right words. Finally, he spoke, but what came out wasn't an answer. It was a name. A name I hadn't heard in years. My chest tightened instantly. That name belonged to someone from my past, someone I thought I had left behind for good. But hearing it from his lips made everything inside me shift. "Why are you talking about them?" I asked, my voice trembling now. "Because," he said, looking straight into my eyes, "they're here. And they've been trying to reach you for weeks." The air seemed to vanish from the room. I took a step back, my hands slipping from the door handle. My mind scrambled to process what he had just said. That person couldn't be here. They weren't supposed to be part of my life anymore. But before I could ask another question, there was a sound outside. A loud, deliberate knock on the door. We both froze. He glanced at the door, then back at me, his face pale. "It's them," he whispered. The knock came again, louder this time, cutting through the sound of the storm. My chest felt tight, every muscle in my body tense. I looked at him, waiting for him to move, to explain, to do something, but he just stood there, his eyes locked on the door like it might burst open at any second. I swallowed hard and stepped toward it, but he caught my hand. "Don't," he whispered. "Not until you hear me out." His voice was low but urgent, carrying the weight of something he had been holding back for too long. "You owe me the truth," I said, pulling my hand free. He nodded once, as if bracing himself. "That person outside, they know something about us, about you, that could change everything. I was trying to protect you." His words hit me like a wave. "Protect me? From what?" The knocking stopped suddenly, replaced by silence. My heartbeat was so loud I could barely hear the rain anymore. Finally, I turned the lock and opened the door. The storm wind rushed in, cold and biting, but I barely noticed it. Standing there, drenched in rain, was a face I thought I'd never see again. My past, staring right back at me. They stepped inside, eyes darting between me and my husband. "You don't know the full story," they said, their voice steady despite the chaos outside. And then, in the space of a few sentences, they unraveled the truth. Secrets I didn't know had been kept from me for years. A betrayal, but not from the person I had expected. I turned to my husband, my stomach twisting as the pieces fell into place. He had lied, but not to hurt me. He had been covering for someone else, trying to shield me from a truth that would have broken me sooner. The storm outside roared louder, almost as if the night itself was reacting to what I'd just learned. My chest felt heavy, torn between relief and shock. But before I could ask the one question still burning in my mind, the person from my past leaned in and whispered something that made my blood run cold. It wasn't over. Not even close. The wind pushed the door shut behind them, sealing us inside with the truth I had tried so hard to avoid. My husband stood rigid, his jaw tight, while the person from my past stared at me with an intensity that felt almost unbearable. The storm outside began to fade, but inside, everything was still turbulent. They spoke slowly, their voice softer now, explaining how years ago, they had made a choice that affected my life without me ever knowing. My husband had discovered it recently and had been trying to protect me, fearing that the truth would undo everything we had built together. I listened in silence, my mind replaying moments that had never quite made sense until now. The late-night calls. The sudden changes in his mood. The way he had held me tonight like I was slipping away. When they were finished, the room felt heavier but somehow clearer. I looked at my husband, really looked at him, and saw the exhaustion in his eyes. "You should have told me," I said quietly. "I know," he replied, his voice barely audible. "But I couldn't stand the thought of watching you break." I turned back to the figure from my past. "And you, why now?" They hesitated, then simply said, "Because you deserve the truth, even if it's late." For a moment, none of us spoke. The clock ticked softly in the background, a reminder that time moves forward whether we are ready or not. I felt the weight of the past pressing on my shoulders, but I also felt something else, release. The truth hadn't destroyed me. It had hurt, yes, but it had also freed me from the unknown that had been haunting me. I took a slow breath and stepped closer to my husband. His hand found mine, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I didn't pull away. We weren't healed completely, but the walls between us had cracked enough to let the light in. As the rain eased into a gentle drizzle, I walked them to the door. No anger. No bitterness. Just a quiet understanding that some chapters are meant to end, no matter how long they've lingered. When the door closed, my husband and I stood there for a moment in silence. Then, almost instinctively, we both turned toward the living room, away from the storm, ready to face whatever came next, together.